At 4:45 in the morning under the cold gray skies of Orlando, silence shattered like glass. A flashbang erupted, sending a shock wave down the empty streets. Helicopter blades cut the dawn. Radio chatter crackled through the dark. In that moment, Florida became the front line of a federal war that had been building in secret for years. Dozens of black-clad agents moved in unison. DEA, FBI, ICE, each one trained for a single coordinated strike that had been planned for months under deep classification. Operation Eclipse had begun. The target was not just a drug ring. It was something deeper, more dangerous. A criminal network that had managed to grow inside the very institutions sworn to protect the law. For years, whispers had circulated through law enforcement corridors about a sheriff who lived too well, a man who flaunted his power and hid his wealth behind speeches about community and service. His name was Marcos Lopez. By sunrise, that name would become a symbol of betrayal. Agents stormed a luxury bar and casino on the outskirts of Orlando. Behind neon lights and velvet ropes, the building looked like any other nightlife hotspot. But beneath its floors lay a labyrinth of hidden vaults and cash rooms. Poker chips flew through the air as battering rams smashed open steel doors. Shouts, gunfire, and chaos echoed through the halls. Within minutes, 2 men were dragged out the back carrying duffel bags full of narcotics, gold, and untraceable cash. Bags they never got the chance to deliver. They were taken down before they could even reach the parking lot. Inside, investigators opened 3 concealed safes. They found over $1 million in cash, stacks of gold bars, and 600 pounds of methamphetamine and cocaine. In the VIP lounge, trays of blue fentanyl pills glimmered under chandeliers, tiny chemical bombs disguised as medicine, potent enough to kill a city block. Each one had been destined for American streets. The agents realized immediately this wasn't a random bust. This was the financial heart of a cartel empire, pumping poison directly into the country. Then came the moment that froze even hardened agents in disbelief. Among the suspects lying face down on the marble floor was a man still in full uniform, sheriff's badge gleaming in the flashing red and blue lights. Sheriff Marcos Lopez. His own deputies had to step forward to handcuff him. The man who had sworn an oath to uphold the law was now at the center of Florida's largest corruption case in decades. As dawn crept over the Orlando skyline, news spread like wildfire. Cameras rolled. Reporters swarmed. What began as a pre-dawn raid had turned into a national reckoning. Federal prosecutors charged Lopez with conspiracy, money laundering, and racketeering. But behind those charges lay something even more sinister. A financial machine designed to turn cartel blood money into legitimate wealth. Analysts inside the Tampa Command Center began decoding hard drives seized from Lopez's casino. What they found sent shockwaves through Washington. The files contained a blueprint of corruption, a system called Operation Eclipse. 12 fake corporations registered across multiple states, 4 underground casinos, 27 offshore accounts in the Caribbean and South America. Over $90 million had been funneled through banks and investment firms, all under Lopez's supervision. He had transformed his county into a laundering corridor for Mexico's most violent cartel, the CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. The same organization responsible for flooding the United States with fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine was now operating through the badge of an American sheriff. For years, Lopez stood in front of cameras preaching integrity and patriotism. He held charity events and posed with local families. But behind the facade, he was clearing routes for cartel shipments, assigning deputies to escort trucks through checkpoints, and using official vehicles to move cash. Every detail pointed to one conclusion: the sheriff was not just corrupt. He was a liaison, the link between Mexico's cartel lords and America's law enforcement structure. As the investigation deepened, the infection spread wider than anyone imagined. A customs officer in El Paso was caught smuggling cocaine shipments across federal gates. In Santa Cruz, agents discovered Homeland Security employees who had accepted hundreds of thousands in bribes to move fentanyl-laced trucks through inspection lanes. In California, an officer of the year had quietly taken $400,000 to let cartel convoys pass unchecked. What started in Florida had rippled across the nation. Each revelation struck like a hammer to America's chest. The badge itself, once the symbol of honor, had become a commodity for sale. In living rooms across the country, families stared at their screens in disbelief. Veterans clenched their fists. Mothers turned off the news, unable to watch. And one question began to echo: if even the guardians of the law can be bought, who will protect the people? 2 days after the sheriff's arrest, the skies over Florida turned from calm to chaos again. Operation Eclipse had entered its second phase. The mission was clear: dismantle every fragment of the cartel's infrastructure and destroy its financial arteries. More than 700 agents were deployed across the state. 28 SWAT teams, 15 Black Hawk helicopters, drones overhead. Tactical units moved through neighborhoods with surgical precision, hitting safe houses, warehouses, and suburban homes used as stash points. From Miami to Jacksonville, the operation unfolded like clockwork. In Tampa, a company called Sunshine Freight Logistics, supposedly a shipping firm, was revealed as a smuggling hub. Agents pried open metal containers to find tons of methamphetamine wrapped in plastic, each brick stamped with the CJ&G insignia. In a mansion outside Miami, officers uncovered a hidden vault under marble floors stacked with cash, cocaine, and ledgers listing payments to officials. By dawn, the results were staggering. Nearly 3 tons of narcotics seized, over 130 firearms, and $9 million in cash and gold. But those numbers were only surface-level victories. In an underground casino in Central Florida, the raid met violent resistance. Private contractors, former military men hired by Lopez's network, opened fire on federal teams. The firefight lasted 9 minutes that felt like an eternity. 4 suspects were killed, 9 captured alive, and dozens of innocent people were pulled out of the line of fire. The casino was reduced to shattered glass and bullet-riddled slot machines. Meanwhile, ICE agents intercepted a convoy of tractor-trailers carrying counterfeit pharmaceuticals bound for distribution hubs across the southeast. The pills looked harmless, but lab tests confirmed pure fentanyl, enough to kill more than 1 million Americans. By nightfall, the full map of the operation glowed red with raid markers. One by one, those dots turned gray as cartel cells fell. In the Tampa command center, the mission commander looked over the digital board and said quietly they thought Florida was their safe zone. Tonight, the state strikes back, but the battle wasn't over. When the shooting stopped, the real war began. Inside the institutions themselves, analysts' heads began to process terabytes of data from seized laptops and encrypted drives. They discovered that the cartel hadn't just bribed police. It had infiltrated departments' payroll systems and training divisions. Names of deputies, customs officers, and federal trainees appeared in spreadsheets linked to offshore payments. The infection wasn't isolated, it was systemic. Federal headquarters launched Project Sentinel, a full-scale internal sweep. For the first time, agencies were ordered to turn inward. Unmarked vans arrived at precincts across Orlando, Tampa, and Miami. 17 police officers, 3 border inspectors, and 2 ICE agents were arrested at their desks. These were not criminals in the street. They were men and women wearing badges, selling intelligence to traffickers, and warning cartel allies before raids. Inside one precinct, an officer watched his partner of 10 years being led away in handcuffs, speechless. The hallways that once echoed with radio chatter now carried only silence and shame. The corruption had roots stretching back more than a decade. It began small. Cash slipped into gym bags, favors for friends in the nightlife scene, political donations disguised as community programs. But within 5 years, the Eclipse network had moved over $6 million in bribes, disguised as training bonuses and outreach funds. Supervisors had looked away. Accountants had erased wire records. Some investigators had buried entire cases. The rot reached deep into the command structure. In Tallahassee, Governor Reynolds declared a state of emergency. Standing behind a podium surrounded by state and federal officials, he said, "If the badge is dirty, the shield is broken. Florida will not stand for betrayal." His words aired live across every major network. That same night, Congress passed the Integrity Shield Act, a sweeping reform that granted investigators full authority to audit every department touched by the Eclipse scandal and created a permanent ethics division inside the Department of Justice. Federal tribunals were convened behind closed doors. Dozens of careers ended overnight. By week's end, the Eclipse empire had collapsed. But the cost was enormous, trust destroyed, reputations ruined, and families torn apart. Still amid the wreckage, something unshakable remained, the conviction that honor had to be rebuilt, no matter the cost. In Orlando, agents transformed the seized casino into an evidence processing zone. Tables once used for gambling now held stacks of evidence bags. Every poker chip, bullet casing, and financial ledger told a story of betrayal. In a massive federal hangar, rows of pallets stretched to the horizon. Cash, gold bars, narcotics, all sealed and guarded. The air smelled of metal and chemicals. Each brick of meth and each fake pill represented a life saved, a community protected. DEA Director Karen Walsh stood before reporters and said quietly, "This isn't victory. It's survival." Her voice carried the weight of exhaustion and defiance. Across Florida, citizens gathered outside police headquarters with candles. Some came to mourn, others to protest. Photos of the arrested officers covered the walls. A mother holding a folded flag whispered, "My son died from fentanyl. At least now someone fought back." The Integrity Shield Act took immediate effect. Every department tied to Eclipse faced mandatory audits and background reviews. Hundreds of officers were cleared, honest men and women who had resisted the corruption and fought from within. For the first time in years, communities began to feel hope again. Former cartel-owned properties were converted into rehabilitation centers. Nightclubs, once marked with the Eclipse logo, were turned into youth outreach facilities. Across the state banners, reading "Reclaim the Light" replaced the symbols of greed. Children played in parks that had once been ruled by dealers. In the halls of Tallahassee, the phrase "Clean the Shield" became both slogan and mission. Governor Reynolds appeared on television again, standing before the Florida flag. "We can't erase what happened," he said, "but we can make sure it never happens again. Florida will not be defined by its corruption, but by how it rose from it." At the DEA command post, Commander Reeves stared at a wall of gray pins marking dismantled Eclipse sites. His team was exhausted, hollow-eyed, but proud. They had fought not just criminals, but betrayal itself. Outside, the sun rose over the Florida coastline. The same waters that once carried cartel shipments now shimmering like molten gold. The battle was far from over, but justice had struck back. In Washington, the ripple effect continued. Federal agencies launched parallel investigations in Texas, California, and Arizona, searching for similar infiltration models. Early reports confirmed that Eclipse had been only one branch of a much larger network. Analysts believed at least 4 other mirror cells existed under different names. Operation Eclipse had revealed a terrifying truth. Cartels no longer fought from the outside. They had learned to embed themselves inside the system, wearing the uniforms of the enemy. That realization changed everything. Recruitment standards tightened nationwide. Financial audits expanded into federal law enforcement. Officers were now required to disclose all secondary income and outside business ties. The Federal Academy introduced a new oath, one that emphasized integrity before authority. Every cadet would now hear the words, "A badge is not armor, it's a promise." Months later, as cleanup operations continued, federal teams unearthed new data from seized servers. Communications between Lopez's inner circle and cartel intermediaries revealed voice notes, coded language, and detailed payroll logs for officers under protection. The evidence left no room for doubt. Lopez had not been a lone traitor. He was part of a system engineered to compromise American justice from within. In the end, he pleaded guilty to racketeering and conspiracy, facing life in federal prison. His final statement was short, "I was in too deep."